Welcome back to the quiet hours where we unravel mysteries together. Tonight, we're stepping into one of the most enigmatic corners of Five Nights at Freddy's, a story that has puzzled fans since the very beginning and continues to spark debate even now. This is the complete story of Golden Freddy, a figure who exists somewhere between reality and nightmare, between memory and vengeance, between one soul and perhaps two. His golden form has appeared in shadows and offices, in minigames and nightmares, always watching, always waiting, always whispering those two unsettling words that have echoed through a decade of theories and speculation. From the moment players first glimpsed that slumped, eyeless bear sitting impossibly in their office, Golden Freddy has represented something different from every other animatronic in this franchise, and he doesn't follow the rules. He doesn't walk through doors or crawl through vents. He simply appears, a supernatural presence that crashes games and defies explanation. But beneath that ghostly exterior lies a story far more complex and heartbreaking than a simple haunting. It's a story of tragedy layered upon tragedy, of a child who suffered twice, of vengeance that refuses to rest, and of questions that may never have definitive answers. Tonight, we'll trace Golden Freddy's path, from the very beginning, back to a family diner in the 1970s, where springlock suits first came to life, through birthday parties turned to horror, through murders in back rooms, through fires and remnant and digital realms. We'll examine every appearance, every behavior, every clue left in minigames and voice lines. We'll explore the theories that have shaped how we understand this character, from the identity of the soul within to whether that soul might actually be two souls sharing one prison of golden fur and empty eyes. Whether you're here to finally understand Golden Freddy's place in the timeline, or simply letting this story wash over you as you drift towards sleep, we'll take our time with every detail, every connection, every mystery that makes this character so endlessly fascinating. So settle in, let the familiar unease of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza wrap around you like a warm blanket, and let's begin our journey into the heart of one of gaming's most mysterious entities. Before we start, if you enjoy these long-form deep dives into FNAF lore, presented in this calm, sleep-friendly style, and go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel, and let me know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. It's always fascinating to see how this same story reaches people across different time zones, all of us sharing these quiet hours together. The origins at Fredbear's Family Diner. Our story begins not with Golden Freddy himself, but with his predecessor, in the warm, innocent days of the 1970s, when two men with a dream opened a small family restaurant. Henry Emily and William Afton, partners in ambition if not in temperament, founded Fredbear's Family Diner. The centerpiece of their venture was Fredbear, a jolly golden bear animatronic designed to sing and entertain, to bring joy to birthday parties and weekend visits. Alongside him stood Spring Bonnie, a yellow rabbit companion, both characters brought to life through innovative springlock technology that would prove to be as dangerous as it was clever. The springlock suits represented a breakthrough in animatronic design for the era. These weren't simply robotic performers locked into pre-programmed routines. The genius and the terror of springlock suits lay in their dual functionality. During automated performances, the suits operated as standard animatronics, their internal mechanisms moving the character through songs and simple choreography. But when human performers were needed, perhaps for more interactive entertainment or special events, those same mechanisms could be wound back and locked into place using a hand crank, compressing the robotic components into small spaces along the sides of the suit. And this created a hollow cavity where a person could climb inside and wear the costume, becoming Fredbear or Spring Bonnie themselves. It was an elegant solution to a practical problem, allowing these early establishments to get more use from expensive animatronic equipment. But the spring-lock system carried inherent dangers that would cast long shadows over everything that followed. Those compressed mechanical parts were held in place by small spring-powered locks throughout the suit, mechanisms that were highly sensitive to moisture, sudden movements, or loosening over time. If even one spring lock failed while someone wore the suit, the stored mechanical and electronic components would snap back into their default positions with tremendous force. The result would be catastrophic for anyone inside, their body pierced by dozens of metal components, crushed by servo motors and endoskeleton parts designed to move an animatronic, not coexist with human flesh. Training tapes from this era, discovered in later investigations, warned employees in calm, procedural tones about these risks. They emphasized the importance of winding the spring locks tightly before wearing the suit, avoiding any moisture including sweat or breath on the mechanisms, and never ever wearing a spring-lock suit in a room where it might come into contact with water. The tapes described the winding process as tedious but essential, requiring workers to carefully crank each individual lock around the suit before climbing inside. Even with all precautions, the suits were described as uncomfortable, hot, and slightly dangerous. But in the cost-cutting world of early animatronic entertainment, slightly dangerous was apparently an acceptable risk. At Fredbear's family diner, these suits served their purpose well in those early years. Henry Emily, the more creative and technical of the two founders, poured his engineering talent into making the animatronics as lifelike and entertaining as possible. He understood that children responded to characters that felt alive, that moved with purpose and personality. William Afton, meanwhile, handled the business aspects, though his mind was always working on darker innovations beneath the surface of partnership and profit. Fredbear himself, in those original days, was a character of simple charm. The animatronic bore resemblance to what would later become Freddy Fazbear, but with distinct characteristics. His fur was a golden yellow rather than brown, and in most depictions, he wore a purple top hat and bow tie, though some records show these accessories as black, perhaps indicating different versions or updates over the years. His build was slightly pudgier than the later Freddy models, giving him a friendlier, more huggable appearance that appealed to the young children who were his primary audience. When operating as an animatronic, Fredbear would perform simple songs, move his arms in welcoming gestures, and turn his head to engage with different parts of the audience. The diner itself was modest compared to the sprawling pizza parlors that would follow. It served simple food, nothing fancy, with the real draw being the entertainment. Birthday parties at Fredbear's became popular events in the local community, and children would gather around the small stage, watching Fredbear and Spring Bonnie perform, their mechanical movements seeming magical in an era before sophisticated robotics became commonplace. Parents appreciated the affordable entertainment and the way it kept children occupied while they enjoyed their meals. For a time, it seemed like Henry and William had found a sustainable business model, one that could grow and evolve. But beneath this veneer of innocent entertainment, tensions were building. William Afton's envy of Henry Emily's stable family life would prove to be a poison that eventually destroyed everything they built. While Henry went home to his wife and daughter Charlie, sharing quiet evenings and building memories, William's own family life was deteriorating. The exact timeline remains unclear, but what we know is that William's resentment grew. His fascination with the animatronics took darker turns, and the seeds of tragedy were being planted in his mind. He began to see the springlock suits not as entertainment tools, but as possibilities for something else entirely. The technology itself was neutral, neither good nor evil. A springlock suit was simply a clever mechanical solution. But in William's hands, in his calculating mind that could separate emotion from action, these suits would become instruments of horror. The very features that made them useful for entertainment also made them perfect for concealment. A person could hide inside. A body could be hidden inside. The suits were large enough, hollow enough, isolated enough when stored in back rooms. These thoughts, dark and patient, were already forming in William Afton's consciousness during these early days at Fredbear's family diner. For now, though, in the warm glow of the 1970s and early 1980s, Fredbear's family diner represented hope and innovation. Children laughed, parents relaxed, and the Golden Bear on stage sang his songs without awareness of the tragedies he would one day be connected to. The springlock suits performed their dual functions. Employees wound the mechanisms carefully, and the business grew. Henry Emily refined his designs, always thinking about the next innovation, the next way to make the characters more engaging and lifelike. William Afton watched, learned, and planned. This was the world into which Golden Freddy would eventually emerge. Though the character didn't exist yet, not really. Fredbear was Fredbear, and a mascot, and an animatronic, and a springlock suit all in one. The transformation into something else, something ghostly and vengeful, required tragedy. It required death and possession, and the blurring of lines between the living and the mechanical. Those elements were still years away, still building toward their inevitable collision. But the stage was set, the technology was in place, and the men who would set everything in motion were already in position. As we move forward in this story, keep in mind these origins. Remember that Golden Freddy's mystery begins with a simple golden bear designed to entertain children. Remember the springlock technology, because it will return again and again throughout this timeline, claiming victims in different ways. Remember Fredbear's family diner, that small restaurant where it all began, because its shadow stretches across every game, every mini-game, every appearance of that golden slumped figure. The past never truly dies in Five Nights at Freddy's. It simply waits, patient and persistent, for its moment to manifest once more. The Bite of 1983 and the Crying Child. In 1983, tragedy struck in the form of a birthday party gone horribly wrong, an event so traumatic that its echoes would reverberate through the entire franchise timeline. This is the story of the Crying Child, a young boy whose short life ended in the mechanical jaws of Fredbear, and whose fate remains one of the most debated elements of Golden Freddy's identity. To understand what happened, we need to step into a household where fear and cruelty had become routine, where an older brother's relentless torment had worn away a younger sibling's sense of safety until only terror remained. The Crying Child, as the community has come to call him, was the younger son of William Afton. His exact name remains unclear in the game's timeline, though various sources have suggested possibilities. What we know with certainty is that he was deeply, paralyzingly afraid of the animatronics that his father helped create. This wasn't a normal child's wariness of large mechanical figures. This was genuine terror, the kind that made him tremble and weep at the mere thought of being near them. Every glimpse of Freddy's face, every sound of mechanical joints moving, every shadow that might be shaped like Foxy sent him into fresh waves of fear. Michael Afton, the older brother, found this fear endlessly amusing, and teenagers can be cruel without fully understanding the damage they inflict. And Michael embodied this particularly vicious form of sibling torment. He would don a Foxy mask, the grinning pirate's face leering with its characteristic eye patch and jaw, and hide in his brother's room. Closets, dark corners, behind doors, anywhere he could crouch and wait until the perfect moment to leap out at his terrified younger sibling. The crying child's screams were apparently entertainment, the tears streaming down his face apparently justified by the excuse of it all being just harmless fun. But Michael didn't act alone. He had friends, fellow teenagers who wore masks of their own. Freddy, Bonnie, and Chica masks transformed Michael's companions into a gang of bullies, a pack of predators stalking a single frightened child. Together, they would corner the crying child during visits to Freddy Fazbear's Pizza, the restaurant that had expanded from the original Fredbear's concept. They would surround him, laughing behind their plastic faces, mocking his tears, pushing him closer to the animatronics he desperately wanted to avoid. In their minds, they were toughening him up, teaching him not to be such a baby. In reality, they were traumatizing a child who already carried more fear than any young person should bear. Throughout this ordeal, the crying child's only companion was a Fredbear plush, a golden teddy bear with purple hat and bow tie that he carried everywhere. This plush wasn't simply a comfort object, though the child treated it as such, clinging to it in the moments of distress. Unknown to the boy, and his father William had placed cameras and speakers inside the plush, using it to monitor his son's whereabouts and occasionally speak to him. The plush would offer cryptic reassurances, telling the child, "I will put you back together," and warning him to be careful, to stay away from danger. These messages, delivered in a distant, echoing voice, may have been William's attempt at protection, or perhaps something else entirely, a way to study fear and trauma in his own child. The surveillance extended beyond the plush. William had placed Fredbear plushies throughout the family home, each one equipped with cameras, creating a network of observation that tracked the crying child's movements. In his bedroom, under tables, in corners where the boy might hide to cry in private, those golden bears watched with their unblinking eyes, and there was a level of control and observation that went beyond parental concern into something more clinical, more detached. William Afton, even then, was treating his own son like a test subject, studying the effects of sustained fear. As the week leading up to the crying child's birthday progressed, the torment intensified. Michael and his friends would lock the boy in rooms, trap him under tables, force him into closer and closer proximity with the animatronics he dreaded. Each day the mini-games show us, leading up to that final birthday party, revealed fresh psychological cruelty. The crying child would try to hide, try to avoid the restaurant, but he was always found, always cornered, always reduced to tears while the teenagers laughed behind their masks. His plush would whisper reassurances, but they offered no real protection and no actual escape from the relentless campaign of fear. Then came the birthday party itself, held at Fredbear's family diner despite the child's obvious terror. The restaurant was busy, full of children celebrating, parents chatting. The usual cheerful chaos of a popular birthday destination. On stage, Fredbear and Spring Bonnie performed their routines, mechanical mouths opening and closing in time with their songs. The crying child tried to hide under a table, tried to make himself small and invisible, but Michael spotted him. One final prank, one last joke before they sang Happy Birthday and cut the cake. Together with his friends, Michael grabbed his crying, struggling brother and lifted him up. They carried him toward the stage, toward Fredbear, whose mechanical jaw was open mid-song. The crying child screamed, begged, and tears streaming down his face. But the teenagers just laughed and chanted about giving Fredbear a big kiss. Higher they lifted him, closer to that open mouth with its rows of square teeth. Then, with a cruel thrust, they pushed the crying child's head directly into Fredbear's mouth. The child's tears, all that moisture they'd caused with their torment, had their effect on the sensitive spring lock mechanisms. Or perhaps the force of the push, the sudden pressure and movement, triggered the release. Either way, the result was instant and catastrophic. Fredbear's jaw clamped shut with the full force of the spring lock mechanisms engaging. The bite crushed the crying child's skull. The mechanical power designed to move an animatronic's head now applied directly to fragile human bone. Blood mingled with the festive decorations as the birthday party descended into screaming chaos. The teenagers, suddenly understanding that their prank had become something unthinkable, could only stand frozen in horror. The laughter died in their throats. The masks they wore seemed to leer at them mockingly, transformed from symbols of fun into witnesses to manslaughter. Paramedics arrived and rushed the crying child to the hospital, but the damage was too severe. In a hospital room, surrounded by beeping monitors and the antiseptic smell of medical equipment, the child lingered between life and death. Michael came to his bedside, the foxy mask abandoned now, his face showing genuine remorse as he apologized to his unconscious brother. The Fredbear plush sat on the bedside table, and through its speakers came that echoing promise one final time: "I will put you back together." Whether this was William speaking to his dying son, or something else using William's recorded voice, remains unclear. The crying child's final moments played out in a strange space between consciousness and death. The monitor's beeping slowed, flatlined, and the child slipped away. The year 1983, confirmed by the date shown on a Fredbear and Friends television show playing in the background, marked the end of his short life and the beginning of something far stranger. This death, this specific tragedy of a child killed by the very animatronic he feared most, would become a crucial piece of Golden Freddy's puzzle. The question of what happened to the crying child's soul, where it went, and what it became, drives some of the deepest debates in the franchise's lore community. Did the child possess Fredbear, the animatronic that killed him, his spirit binding to the machine in a mirror of the possession mechanics we see with other victims? Did he become Shadow Freddy, a dark echo of trauma? Did his agony infuse the nightmare animatronics that would later haunt his brother Michael's dreams? Or did something even stranger occur, a splitting or sharing of identity that would eventually contribute to Golden Freddy's unusual nature? The promise to put him back together suggests William had plans for his son's remains, perhaps related to the remnant experiments that would define William's later actions. What we can say with certainty is that the bite of 1983 changed everything. It closed Fredbear's family diner permanently, the venue tainted by tragedy beyond repair. It shattered Michael Afton, transforming a thoughtless bully into someone who would carry guilt for the rest of his life. It demonstrated the lethal potential of spring-lock failures in the most public, horrific way possible, and it created the first connection between a child's death and the Golden Bear animatronic, planting seeds that would grow into Golden Freddy's complex identity. The Crying Child's story is one of unrelenting fear, culminating in the very thing he feared most. It's a tragedy without villains in the traditional sense, just thoughtless cruelty, unsafe technology, and the kind of accident that feels inevitable in retrospect. His short life of terror ended in Fredbear's jaws, but his presence in the story was far from over. In death, he would become part of something larger, something that would haunt his family and the franchise for decades to come. Whether he rests peacefully or remains trapped in golden fur, the Crying Child's fate remains one of the most poignant mysteries in this entire chronicle of mechanical horror. The Missing Children incident and Cassidy, while the Crying Child's story connects Golden Freddy to Fredbear and the events of 1983, another tragedy would prove equally crucial to understanding this mysterious entity. In 1985, at a Freddy Fazbear's Pizza location, William Afton committed his most infamous crime, the murders that would come to be known as the Missing Children incident. Among those victims was a child named Cassidy, and it is this soul that most directly possesses Golden Freddy, bringing forth the vengeance and supernatural power that defines the character we encounter throughout the games. The Missing Children incident unfolded over days, or perhaps weeks, though the games show us only glimpses through minigames and newspaper clippings. William Afton, dressed in a spare spring bonnie suit, to disguise himself as one of the establishment's characters, lured children away from the main party rooms into the hidden back areas of the restaurant. 5 children in total, their names revealed through various sources across the franchise's timeline. Gabriel, who would come to possess Freddy Fazbear. Jeremy, whose soul would inhabit Bonnie. Susie, who we know was lured with lies about her dead dog being alive in the back room, who would possess Chica. Fritz, who became Foxy. And Cassidy, the 5th victim, whose fate was tied to Golden Freddy. Cassidy's identity has been pieced together through careful examination of the survival logbook, a canon piece of merchandise that contains puzzles and hidden messages. Within its pages, coordinates hidden in seemingly random numbers lead to specific letters in a word search puzzle. When solved, these coordinates spell out the name Cassidy. The same puzzle contains the phrase "It's me" scattered throughout, a phrase intimately associated with Golden Freddy's appearances. This connection, while subtle, strongly suggests Cassidy as the name of the 5th victim, and when combined with other evidence, points toward Cassidy being the primary soul within Golden Freddy's suit, though the franchise has never explicitly confirmed this link in the games themselves. In the novels, specifically The Fourth Closet, where Cassidy is depicted as a young girl with long black hair. However, the gender of Cassidy in the games remains a subject of debate within the community. Some voice lines in Ultimate Custom Night refer to the one you shouldn't have killed, with what appear to be male pronouns, while the survival logbook's hidden imagery could suggest either interpretation. This ambiguity has led to ongoing discussions, though what remains undisputed is that Cassidy represents the vengeful spirit that refuses to rest, the soul that keeps Golden Freddy active long after the other children have found peace. William's method with these children was coldly efficient. He earned their trust by appearing as a friendly Spring Bonnie character, then led them one by one to the hidden safe room, and a space not visible on security cameras, and not programmed into the animatronics patrol patterns. In that isolated room, he murdered them. The details of their deaths are mercifully left vague in the games, but the aftermath was clear. 5 children dead, their bodies requiring disposal, and William settling on a horrific solution that would inadvertently create the haunted animatronics that would plague every location going forward. He stuffed the children's bodies into the animatronic suits. This served dual purposes. It hid the evidence of his crimes within the hollow shells of the entertainment robots, and it placed the children's remains in direct contact with the animatronic endoskeletons. This physical contact would prove crucial for what came next, an event shown in the Give Gifts Give Life minigame from Five Nights at Freddy's 2. The puppet, itself possessed by Charlie Emily, William's first victim from an earlier tragedy, took on the role of granting these new victims a form of life after death. In the pixelated minigame, we see the puppet approaching 4 slumped children and placing animatronic heads over them. Freddy's head for Gabriel, Bonnie's for Jeremy, Chica's for Susie, Foxy's for Fritz. These children then possess their respective animatronics, their souls merging with the machinery that now encased their physical remains. But there's a 5th child in the center of the room, and when the puppet approaches this victim, instead of a smooth head placement, we see a glitching Golden Freddy jump scare. This 5th child is Cassidy. I sensed something about their possession was different from the others. The exact nature of this difference remains debated. Some theorize that Cassidy's body was placed in a Fredbear suit, stored at this location, making their possession incomplete or unstable compared to the children in the main 4 animatronics. Others suggest that Cassidy's stronger will or the nature of their death created a more powerful haunting. Whatever the reason, Golden Freddy behaves differently from the possessed animatronics. Where Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy move through the building following semi-predictable patterns, Golden Freddy simply appears, defying physical space and mechanical limitations. In the aftermath of the murders, the restaurant began to experience problems. Customers complained about foul odors coming from the animatronics and that unmistakable smell of decay that suggested something was very wrong. Parents reported seeing blood and mucus around the eyes and mouths of the suits, bodily fluids leaking from the corpses sealed within. Yet somehow, despite investigations and complaints, the bodies were never discovered, never properly connected to William Afton. The restaurant closed due to the bad publicity and rumors, but William escaped justice, free to continue his experiments and murders elsewhere. For the children's souls, this became their new existence. Confused, traumatized, unable to fully understand what had happened to them, they lashed out at the night guards and any adults who entered the restaurant after hours. Their programming, such as it was, consisted of protecting children and viewing adults as potential threats. In their ghostly state, possessing mechanical bodies they couldn't fully control, they enacted a simplistic revenge against anyone in a security guard uniform, seeing them all as potential versions of the man who killed them. Cassidy's role among these children was unique. While Gabriel, Jeremy, Susie, and Fritz seemed to maintain some level of connection to each other, sometimes moving in coordinated patterns, Cassidy operated independently. Golden Freddy appeared alone, behaved alone, and carried a special significance that the others didn't share. The phrase, "it's me," that accompanies Golden Freddy's manifestations could be interpreted as Cassidy trying to communicate, to identify themselves, to make their existence known in a way the others couldn't or wouldn't. The missing children incident fundamentally shaped Fazbear Entertainment's trajectory. It transformed innocent entertainment robots into vessels of vengeance. It demonstrated that souls could possess animatronics when placed in direct contact with them at the moment of or shortly after death. It showed William Afton that his murders had consequences he hadn't anticipated, that the children he killed didn't simply disappear but remained angry and aware, capable of attacking him when he later returned to dismantle the animatronics. For Cassidy specifically, this event marked the beginning of an existence defined by rage and refusal to move on. Unlike the other children, who would eventually find peace through the Happiest Day minigame in Five Nights at Freddy's 3, evidence from later games suggests Cassidy chose a different path. This vengeful spirit, based on interpretations of Ultimate Custom Night, appears to have tormented William Afton, seemingly refused Old Man Consequence's offer to rest, and potentially continued existing in Golden Freddy's form long after the others had passed on. The missing children incident created 5 victims, but only one who would become known as the one you shouldn't have killed. Understanding Cassidy's story is essential to understanding Golden Freddy. This isn't just a random haunted animatronic or a glitch in the system. This is a child who was murdered, stuffed into a suit, granted a twisted form of life by another victim trying to help, and then chose vengeance over peace. This is someone who, when given the chance to rest, looked at their killer and decided that eternal torture was more important than their own release. That level of determination, that depth of anger, are manifests in Golden Freddy's unique behaviors across the games, in the way this character defies rules and expectations, in the way Cassidy's will shapes reality itself within the haunted pizzeria. First appearance in Five Nights at Freddy's 1. The original Five Nights at Freddy's introduced players to many horrors, but none quite as unnerving as Golden Freddy. While Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy followed predictable patterns, moving through the building with mechanical persistence, this 5th animatronic operated on entirely different principles. Golden Freddy didn't walk through doorways or peer through windows. Golden Freddy simply appeared, manifesting in your office like a ghost. A golden spectre that shouldn't exist, but undeniably does. The mechanics of triggering Golden Freddy in the first game have become legendary among players, and in the West Hall corner camera, labeled as Camera 2B, a poster hangs on the wall showing Freddy Fazbear's face. This poster can change between 3 different states. The normal Freddy image, a distorted version where Freddy appears to be ripping his own head off in a gruesome display, and rarely, very rarely, a close-up image of Golden Freddy's face, eyeless and unsettling against a dark background. When this third image appears, something has already gone wrong. If a player is unlucky enough or curious enough to flip up to camera 2B and see Golden Freddy's poster, then lower their monitor to return to the office view, they'll find him waiting. He sits slumped against the left wall, between the left door and the office desk, in a pose that immediately sets him apart from every other animatronic. Where the others stand upright, are ready to move and attack, Golden Freddy sits with his arms dangling uselessly, his legs splayed out, his entire posture suggesting abandonment or deactivation. But his head is raised, and in those empty eye sockets, tiny white pinprick pupils stare directly at the player. The appearance is accompanied by visual distortions. The screen flashes with random images, hallucinations that players had been experiencing throughout the night. A close-up of Freddy's face with human eyes staring out from the costume. Eyeless Bonnie looming in darkness. These images flash for split seconds, too quick to fully process, along with the phrase, "It's me," appearing on screen in bold white letters. The whole effect is deeply unsettling. A breaking of the game's established rules that signals something fundamental has gone wrong. Players have only a few seconds to react. If they can raise the monitor again quickly enough, Golden Freddy will disappear, simply ceasing to exist as mysteriously as he appeared. The poster on camera 2B will return to its normal state, and the night can continue as if nothing happened. But if the player hesitates, if they stare at this impossible figure for too long or fail to lift the monitor in time, Golden Freddy's jump scare triggers. This jump scare is unlike any other in the game. Rather than lunging at the camera or screaming into the player's face, Golden Freddy's head simply fills the screen, closer and larger than any other jump scare. His empty eyes and gaping mouth dominating the player's vision. The sound that accompanies this jump scare is distinct, a deeper, more distorted version of Freddy's laugh mixed with screaming. And then, instead of a simple game over screen, the entire game crashes. The application closes itself, forcing the player back to their desktop. Golden Freddy doesn't just kill you. He breaks the game itself. This crashing behavior made Golden Freddy legendary in the early days of Five Nights at Freddy's. YouTubers and streamers who encountered him would lose their progress, their recordings capturing genuine shock as their game unexpectedly closed. Theorists debated what it meant. Was this animatronic so powerful, so unnatural, that he could affect the game's code? Was this a deliberate design choice by Scott Cawthon to emphasize Golden Freddy's supernatural nature? The crashing became Golden Freddy's signature, proof that this character existed outside the normal rules. Adding to the mystery was Golden Freddy's appearance itself, and he looked like Freddy Fazbear, sharing the same basic shape and features, but rendered in gold instead of brown. His top hat and bow tie appeared dark blue or black, depending on lighting, rather than the bright colors of other animatronics. Most strikingly, he had no eyes, just empty black sockets with those tiny white pupils floating impossibly within them. His right hand held a microphone, lying limply in his palm rather than gripped purposefully. Everything about his design suggested a deactivated suit, something that shouldn't be moving or aware, yet clearly was. The phone calls from Phone Guy, the previous night guard leaving messages for the new employee, never mention Golden Freddy directly. Phone Guy talks about Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and the Foxy, explaining their patterns and behaviors, but this fifth animatronic goes unacknowledged in the training. This silence could mean several things. Perhaps Phone Guy didn't know about Golden Freddy, never encountered him during his shifts. Perhaps Golden Freddy only became active after Phone Guy's death, as some theories suggest. Or perhaps Phone Guy did know and chose not to mention him, either because he didn't believe what he'd seen, or because he knew that no amount of warning could prepare someone for Golden Freddy's appearance. The "It's me" messages that flash on screen during Golden Freddy's appearance, and occasionally at other times throughout the week, created endless speculation. Who is speaking? To whom? One interpretation suggests these messages come from Golden Freddy himself, trying to communicate with the Night Guard, and a widely accepted theory within the community proposes that Mike Schmidt is actually Michael Afton, using an alias, the crying child's older brother. If this theory holds true, and if the crying child's spirit contributes to Golden Freddy in some way, "It's me" could represent him trying to make his brother recognize him, to say, "I'm still here, I'm in this suit, it's me, your brother." But there's another interpretation. If Cassidy is the primary soul in Golden Freddy, "It's me" could simply be an introduction, a declaration of presence. Cassidy making themselves known, asserting their existence to anyone who can see or hear them. The repetition of the phrase, its appearance in context beyond Golden Freddy's direct manifestation, suggests it's deeply important to this character's identity. It's not just "it's me," but "it's me" said over and over, insistently, as if the speaker needs you to understand who they are. The file name for Golden Freddy in the original game's code was simply Yellow Bear, a straightforward descriptor that lacked the weight his fan-given name would eventually carry. It wasn't until the second game that the name Golden Freddy appeared officially in the custom night menu, but the fan community had already settled on Golden Freddy as his designation, a name that stuck and became canon through popular usage, even catching the attention of creators like Markiplier, who helped popularize the character. Golden Freddy's role in the first game is relatively small in terms of screen time but enormous in impact. He appears rarely, his poster triggers infrequently, and many players could complete the entire game without ever seeing him. But for those who did encounter this golden ghost, the experience was unforgettable. He represented something beyond the mechanical horror of the other animatronics. Where they were possessed machines following corrupted programming, Golden Freddy felt purely supernatural, unbound by physical laws or game mechanics. The first game established Golden Freddy as an entity of pure mystery. No explanation was offered for his existence, his behavior, or his powers. He simply was, a fact of the Freddy Fazbear's Pizza universe that defied understanding. This mystery would drive speculation and theory crafting for years, as each subsequent game added new pieces to the puzzle without ever fully solving it. The slumped golden bear with empty eyes and reality-breaking powers became one of gaming's most iconic mysterious figures, all from a handful of appearances in a simple indie horror game. Withered Golden Freddy in Five Nights at Freddy's 2. When Five Nights at Freddy's 2 arrived as a prequel to the original game, players discovered a location filled with both new toy animatronics and the withered remains of the original characters. Among these deteriorated performers lurked a version of Golden Freddy that would prove even more unsettling than his already disturbing first game appearance. Withered Golden Freddy, as the community would call him, despite never receiving that official designation in-game, represented the character in a state of advanced decay, his supernatural nature more pronounced and his behavior more aggressive. Withered Golden Freddy's appearance reflected years of neglect and damage. His golden fur was faded and dirty, torn in places to reveal the underlying endoskeleton structure. His entire left ear had been completely torn away, leaving only wires protruding from where it had been attached. These same wires hung from his shoulders and eye sockets, creating the impression of a suit that had been literally ripped apart. His head tilted sharply to the left, as if his neck servos could no longer support its weight properly, adding to the sense that this animatronic was barely holding together. The most striking change was the visibility of his teeth. Where classic Golden Freddy had a closed lower jaw, withered Golden Freddy revealed upper teeth, square and white against the darkness of his mouth, similar to the other withered animatronics. His eye sockets remained empty save for those floating white pinprick pupils, but the overall effect was even more corpse-like than before. A golden shell of an animatronic that looked like it should be in a parts and service room awaiting dismantlement, not actively haunting the building. In Five Nights at Freddy's 2, withered Golden Freddy only becomes active on Night 6 and the custom night, making him a late-game threat that tests players who've already mastered the toy animatronics patterns. his mechanics differed significantly from the first game, no longer requiring a specific poster trigger, but instead appearing through different means entirely. He could manifest in the hallway outside the office, visible through the security camera view, sitting in that same slumped position that defined his appearance. And if the player looked at him too long through the camera, he would jump scare them directly from that hallway view. Alternatively, and more terrifyingly, he could simply appear in the office itself. The player would lower their monitor to check the doorways, and there he would be, sitting against the far wall between the two openings, staring with those empty eyes. Unlike in the first game, raising the monitor would no longer save the player. Once withered Golden Freddy appeared in the office, the player had to put on the Freddy Fazbear mask, the same mask used to fool the toy animatronics. If they did this quickly enough, Golden Freddy would vanish. If they hesitated or tried any other defense, his jump scare would trigger. But there was a third, even stranger manifestation. Sometimes, when checking the hallway camera, our players would see not the full slumped figure of withered Golden Freddy, but simply his head, floating in the darkness like a ghost, disconnected from any body. This disembodied head could also appear directly in the office, hovering in the air, before rushing forward in a jump scare. The image was deeply unnerving, suggesting that Golden Freddy didn't even need a complete body to manifest, that he could appear in fragments, in impossible configurations that defied physics. Unlike his appearance in the first game, withered Golden Freddy's jump scare in Five Nights at Freddy's 2 didn't crash the game. Instead, it simply killed the player and sent them to the game over screen, like any other animatronic. And this change was notable because it suggested that perhaps the game-crashing behavior wasn't an inherent property of Golden Freddy, but specific to his manifestation in the first game's location. Or perhaps by this point in the timeline, Golden Freddy had different capabilities or limitations. The lore implications of such mechanical differences continue to fuel debates. The custom night menu in Five Nights at Freddy's 2 was where the name Golden Freddy appeared officially for the first time. Players could adjust his difficulty alongside the other animatronics, confirming that despite his supernatural behavior, he was being treated as a selectable character in the game's code. His mugshot on this screen showed his withered face in detail. The damaged ear, the exposed wires, the tilted head, and all rendered in that unsettling golden color that set him apart from every other character. Interestingly, during the Save Them minigame in Five Nights at Freddy's 2, where the player controls a Freddy sprite navigating the pizzeria and discovering multiple dead children, Golden Freddy makes a brief appearance. Following the player through the game, appearing at the end before the Save Them message appears, his presence suggests involvement in or awareness of these new murders. William Afton was committing during this game's time frame. This connection between Golden Freddy and the ongoing tragedy reinforced that this entity was deeply tied to the murders that haunted Fazbear Entertainment. The behavior differences between withered Golden Freddy and his first game counterpart raised questions about the nature of possession and how it changes over time. In the second game, set chronologically before the first, Golden Freddy seems more aggressive, more willing to actively hunt the night guard rather than simply appearing and waiting to be noticed. His manifestation methods are more varied, appearing in multiple forms and locations. This could suggest that Cassidy's spirit was more active and vengeful during this earlier period, or perhaps that the crying child's potential presence in Golden Freddy was stronger here, creating different behavioral patterns. Some theorists point to the withered state itself as significant, All the old animatronics in Five Nights at Freddy's 2 are damaged and deteriorating because they've been sitting unused in a back room, stripped for parts to help build the new toy animatronics. But Golden Freddy wasn't a primary character, wasn't on the main stage, so his withered state must come from different circumstances. Was this Fredbear's actual suit from the diner, damaged from the bite of 1983? Or was this a Golden Freddy-specific suit that had suffered its own traumatic events? The visible damage could be cosmetic neglect, or could reflect spiritual trauma, manifesting as physical decay. The fact that withered Golden Freddy appears more damaged in the chronologically earlier game than he does in the first game creates a continuity puzzle. If these were normal animatronics, we'd expect to see progressive deterioration over time. But Golden Freddy in Five Nights at Freddy's 1 looks cleaner, more intact, despite taking place years later. This suggests that Golden Freddy's appearance isn't bound by normal physical rules, that his manifestation can take different forms, depending on circumstances we don't fully understand. Perhaps the withered form represents the Fredbear suit, post-bite of 83, while the cleaner form in the first game is a spiritual manifestation, taking the shape Golden Freddy believes he should have. Withered Golden Freddy also introduces the floating head jump scare, which would become a recurring element in Golden Freddy's appearances. There's something primal about a disembodied head rushing toward you, something that taps into deep fears about dismemberment and incompleteness. That Golden Freddy can appear this way, just a head without a body, reinforces his supernatural nature. He's not bound by the need for a complete physical form. He can be whatever he needs to be to induce terror, to make his presence known, to remind the night guard that they're not dealing with a normal haunted animatronic. The second game expanded Golden Freddy's lore significantly while maintaining his core mystery. We learned that he could be more aggressive, could appear in multiple forms, could function in different locations and time periods. We saw him officially named, saw him included in roster menus alongside less mysterious characters. But the fundamental question of who or what Golden Freddy truly was remained unanswered, the Golden Bear continuing to defy easy explanation even as his presence in the franchise's story grew more undeniable. Five Nights at Freddy's 3 and the Path to Peace. By the time Five Nights at Freddy's 3 released, the franchise had established complex lore around the missing children and their possessions of the animatronics. This third game would address their fates through a series of hidden minigames, offering players the chance to grant these tortured souls their freedom. Golden Freddy's role in this game, while less direct than in previous installments, proved crucial to understanding the character's place in the larger narrative of loss and redemption. The main gameplay of Five Nights at Freddy's 3 takes place 30 years after the first game, in a horror attraction called Fazbear's Fright, built to capitalize on the legends and urban myths surrounding the defunct pizza chain. The attraction's owners had scavenged props and equipment from the abandoned locations, creating a museum of sorts dedicated to Freddy Fazbear's dark history. Golden Freddy doesn't appear directly in the main nights of this game, but his presence echoes through the hidden minigames that unlock between gameplay sessions. The minigame called Stage 01 shows a different side of Golden Freddy's story. In this simple 8-bit style game, we see what appears to be a stage with a Golden Bear animatronic performing for a single child. The bear gives the child a cake, a gesture of kindness and celebration. Interestingly, the game files explicitly label this character as G Freddy, confirming it's meant to be Golden Freddy rather than Fredbear, though the distinction between these characters remains debated. This scene of simple joy, quote, a golden bear giving cake to a happy child, stands in stark contrast to the horror that would follow. The Happiest Day minigame represents the culmination of the third game's hidden sequence. After players complete various cryptic tasks in the Between Night minigames, following secret paths and triggering hidden switches, they unlock this final scene. It shows a party room with 4 children seated at a table, each wearing masks of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. A 5th child sits at the head of the table, initially maskless, while the puppet stands nearby holding a cake. As the minigame progresses, the puppet approaches the central child and gives them a cake, a moment of kindness that mirrors the stage 01 scene. The 4 masked children at the table then remove their masks, revealing that they're no longer wearing them. Finally, a golden Freddy mask is placed on the 5th child, and all 5 children, now freed from their symbolic prisons, disappear, ascending to whatever lies beyond this haunted realm. Their balloon-like departure suggests release, peace, an ending to their suffering. This scene has been interpreted as the good ending achievable in Five Nights at Freddy's 3, the moment when the spirits of the missing children finally find rest. Gabriel, Jeremy, Susie, Fritz, and Cassidy, the 5 victims of William Afton's cruelty, all receiving their happiest day, the birthday party they never got to finish. The golden Freddy mask being placed last suggests Cassidy was the final spirit to be freed, perhaps the most reluctant to let go, or perhaps simply the one who needed the most help to find peace. But there's ambiguity in this happy resolution. After completing the main nights of Five Nights at Freddy's 3, players see an ending screen showing the heads of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy in darkness. If the player achieved the good ending through completing the mini-games, these heads have no lights in their eyes, suggesting the spirits have moved on. But if the player got the bad ending, lights glow in the eye sockets, indicating the children remain trapped. Golden Freddy's head appears in the bad ending as well, but it's positioned differently from the others, further back and harder to see. Initial screenshots suggested it had 2 lights in its eye sockets, leading to theories about dual possession or 2 spirits sharing the suit. However, closer examination and brightened images revealed only 1 light source, it coming from a single eye and reflecting through the translucent material of the head to create the illusion of 2 lights. This detail became important to debates about whether Golden Freddy hosted 1 soul or 2. What makes Golden Freddy's role in the good ending particularly interesting is that even when the other spirits find peace, questions remain about whether Cassidy truly moved on. Later games, particularly Ultimate Custom Night, suggest that Golden Freddy's spirit, or at least part of it, continued to exist after the events of Five Nights at Freddy's 3, refusing to accept the peace offered in Happiest Day. This persistent vengeance would define Cassidy's character in subsequent lore. The third game also introduced Phantom Freddy, a hallucination or supernatural echo that stumbles down the hallway at Fazbear's Fright. While technically a separate character, Phantom Freddy uses a recolored and modified model of withered Golden Freddy from the second game, giving him a green, burnt appearance, but maintaining Golden Freddy's basic structure. This connection might be purely practical, reusing assets to create a new threat, or it might suggest something about Golden Freddy's continued presence even 30 years later, manifesting in different forms. The minigames Between Nights also show Shadow Freddy, a dark purple version of Golden Freddy, luring the classic animatronics to the safe room where William Afton dismantles them. Some theories connect Shadow Freddy to the crying child, or to Remnant from the Springlock failures at Fredbear's, creating another potential link to Golden Freddy's complex identity. The use of Golden Freddy's form for this shadow entity reinforces how central this character is to the franchise's mythology. Stage 01 and Happiest Day together tell a story of gift-giving and receiving. In Stage 01, Golden Freddy or Fredbear gives a child a cake, providing joy. In Happiest Day, Golden Freddy's child receives a cake from the puppet, achieving joy. This narrative symmetry suggests a cycle completing, a debt repaid, a kindness returned. The child who once gave happiness gets to receive it, breaking the cycle of tragedy that had defined their existence. But there's a darker reading available too. If we interpret these scenes through the lens of William Afton's manipulations, Stage 01 could show William in a spring bonnie or Golden Freddy suite, luring a child with the promise of cake, using joy as a tool for murder. The Happiest Day then becomes Charlie through the puppet, undoing that manipulation by giving real joy, real peace, to the children William destroyed. The cake that was once bait for murder becomes genuine celebration, transforming tragedy into triumph. The ambiguity of whether Golden Freddy truly found peace in Five Nights at Freddy's 3 would become a major plot point in understanding the character's arc. Did Cassidy accept Happiest Day and move on, only for their spirit to be called back by later events? Did they reject the peace offering from the start, choosing vengeance over rest? Or was only part of Golden Freddy's composite identity freed, with another part remaining behind? These questions wouldn't receive clear answers until Ultimate Custom Night explored the concept of a vengeful spirit in greater depth. Of Five Nights at Freddy's, 3 represented a potential ending for Golden Freddy's story, a moment when this tortured soul could have found rest alongside the other victims. The imagery of children removing their masks and ascending together is powerfully symbolic, suggesting they've shed the identities forced upon them by possession and death. But in the Five Nights at Freddy's universe, endings are never quite as final as they appear, and Golden Freddy's story was far from over. Five Nights at Freddy's 4 and Fredbear Connections. Five Nights at Freddy's 4 took the franchise in a new direction, abandoning the security guard perspective for a child's bedroom, replacing animatronics on cameras with nightmares closing in from every direction. This game delved deep into the bite of 1983, showing us the week leading up to that tragedy through minigame sequences between nights. Fredbear takes center stage in these minigames, and his connection to Golden Freddy becomes both clearer and more complicated. The minigames show us the crying child's daily terrors, each one ending at a different location, but all building toward that fatal birthday party. We see Fredbear's family diner from a child's perspective, the animatronics looming large and threatening despite their friendly designs. Fredbear himself appears throughout these scenes, sometimes on stage performing, sometimes as the plush companion the child carries everywhere, sometimes in the child's fearful imagination, blown up to monstrous proportions. The Fredbear we see in these minigames differs slightly from the withered Golden Freddy of earlier games. He has a purple top hat and bow tie, rather than the dark blue or black accessories of Golden Freddy. His proportions are chubbier, more suited to the 8-bit art style, but also suggesting a different build than the sleeker Freddy-based design. These differences have fueled debates about whether Fredbear and Golden Freddy are the same character, different versions of the same suit, or entirely separate entities that happen to share similar appearances. During the actual gameplay portions of Five Nights at Freddy's 4, the player must survive nights in a child's bedroom while nightmare versions of the animatronics attack. Nightmare Fredbear appears on night 5, replacing all other threats as the sole antagonist. His design is horrifying, taking Fredbear's golden colouring and adding rows of sharp teeth in his mouth and stomach, and emphasising the biting capacity that would define the real Fredbear's most notorious moment. Nightmare Fredbear moves between the bedroom doors and the closet, his footsteps thundering through the house, his breathing raspy and menacing. When he jump scares the player, his jaws snap shut with deliberate force, a direct callback to the bite of 1983. This nightmare version represents the child's absolute terror of the animatronic that would eventually kill him. Fear made manifest in the most literal and aggressive form possible. On night 6, Nightmare Fredbear is replaced by Nightmare, a pitch-black version with yellow eyes and hat, sometimes considered a nightmare form of Shadow Freddy, or possibly representing death itself, but returning to night 5 reveals Nightmare Fredbear's voice lines, which add layers to his identity. In a deep, undistorted voice, he makes statements that seem directed at the crying child specifically. "Let me put you back together, then take you apart all over again," echoes the promise made to the dying child. "We know who our friends are, and you are not one of them," suggests knowledge of the brother who caused the bite. These voice lines have led to theories connecting Nightmare Fredbear to later events. Could this be the crying child's spirit speaking through a nightmare form? Could this be William Afton's voice, filtered through guilt and memory? Or could this somehow be connected to Michael Afton, having these nightmares years later, his guilt over his brother's death, manifesting as the animatronic that killed him? The game deliberately leaves these questions open. The Fredbear plush that appears throughout the minigames speaks to the child in ways that suggest surveillance and manipulation. The text appears in yellow, the same color as Fredbear and Golden Freddy, creating visual associations between the plush's mysterious speaker and these Golden Bear characters. The final scene shows the plush speaking that famous line, "I will put you back together," as the child's consciousness fades. Whether this is William Afton speaking through hidden speakers, some supernatural force, or the child's own dying thoughts remains deliberately ambiguous. What Five Nights at Freddy's 4 definitively established was Fredbear's crucial role in the franchise's foundational tragedy. The bite of 1983 became the event that started everything. The first major death involving the animatronics, the moment that proved these suits were dangerous beyond the simple spring-lock failures mentioned in training tapes. A child died in Fredbear's mouth, and that death rippled through every subsequent event. The relationship between Fredbear and Golden Freddy becomes a question of evolution and identity. Is Golden Freddy literally the Fredbear suit from Fredbear's family diner? The same physical suit that bit the crying child, later moved to Freddy Fazbear's pizza locations, where it became associated with the missing children? Or is Golden Freddy a separate suit, perhaps a backup Fredbear, or a Freddy Fazbear recolored to match Fredbear's scheme? The games provide evidence for multiple interpretations. In the novel trilogy, Golden Freddy is explicitly stated to be Fredbear, armed with characters recognizing the yellow bear as the original mascot from Henry and William's first restaurant. But the novel timeline operates differently from the game timeline, so this connection might not hold. The games show Fredbear with purple accessories, while Golden Freddy typically has black or dark blue, a small difference that could indicate separate suits, or simply different versions of the same character across different time periods. The Ultimate Custom Night would later feature both Fredbear and Golden Freddy as selectable characters, seeming to treat them as distinct entities. Fredbear in that game has purple accessories and a specific voice, while Golden Freddy appears as his withered self. Yet using the death coin item on Golden Freddy causes Fredbear to jump scare the player instead, linking them directly, and this connection suggests they're not entirely separate, even if they're not identical. For players trying to understand Golden Freddy's complete story, Five Nights at Freddy's 4 is essential. It shows us where the Golden Bear animatronic began, in a small family diner before the franchise expanded. It shows us the first tragedy associated with this character, a child dying in circumstances that would haunt everyone involved. It introduces the put you back together promise that drives so much speculation about remnant possession and William Afton's attempts to resurrect his son. The nightmare sequences also demonstrate how deeply Fredbear/Golden Freddy is embedded in the minds of the Afton family. Whether these nightmares belong to the crying child during his hospital stay, to Michael Afton years later racked with guilt, or to some other character entirely, they feature Fredbear as the ultimate threat. This psychological weight transforms Fredbear from a simple animatronic into a symbol of family trauma, of innocence destroyed, of fear that can't be escaped even in sleep. Five Nights at Freddy's 4 doesn't solve the mystery of Golden Freddy, but it recontextualizes everything we thought we knew. It takes this mysterious, game-crashing entity and grounds him in a specific tragedy, in a specific relationship between brothers, in a specific moment when a prank went horribly wrong. The Golden Bear stopped being just a ghost in the machine and became a memorial to a child whose short life ended in the very jaws he feared most. Ultimate Custom Night and the Vengeful Spirit. Ultimate Custom Night stands as one of the most lore-significant entries in the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise, and Golden Freddy's role in this game transforms our understanding of the character from a mysterious ghost into a defined, purposeful entity driven by unquenchable rage. This is where we meet the one you should not have killed, and where evidence strongly suggests Cassidy's vengeful nature becomes the central force driving an eternal nightmare designed specifically for William Afton's torment. The premise of Ultimate Custom Night, when viewed through its lore rather than just as a gameplay challenge, depicts William Afton trapped in a personalized hell. After the fire that ended Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator, after being spring-locked, surviving a spring trap, burning in Fazbear's Fright, and being brought back in Scrap Trap form, William finally dies. But instead of moving on to whatever afterlife awaits, or simply ceasing to exist, he finds himself in an endless nightmare where every animatronic he ever created or encountered hunts him relentlessly. This nightmare isn't random chaos. It's carefully constructed by a specific spirit with a specific purpose. Various animatronics, when they kill the player, speak about the one you should not have killed. Withered Chica states directly, "I have seen him, the one you shouldn't have killed." Other characters reference this mysterious entity, always in reverential or knowing tones, suggesting this spirit is the architect of William's torment, the puppet master pulling strings to ensure Afton suffers eternally. The identity of this vengeful spirit is heavily implied through multiple pieces of evidence to be Golden Freddy, specifically Cassidy's aspect of Golden Freddy. Upon achieving the maximum difficulty of 50 on all 20 mode, players unlock a cutscene showing Golden Freddy's face. He slumped as always, but now he's twitching violently, shaking with what appears to be rage or agony, or perhaps the strain of maintaining this entire construct. The scene is brief. just a few seconds of this tortured movement before Golden Freddy fades into darkness. This visual connection suggests that Golden Freddy isn't at peace, isn't resting despite the happiest day, isn't finished with William Afton. The mediocre melodies animatronics in Ultimate Custom Night have voice lines that, when listened to carefully, contain a second voice underneath the primary character's speech. This hidden voice belongs to the vengeful spirit, offering taunts and promises to William Afton. Through Ned Bear, they say, "This is how it feels," and you get to experience it over and over and over again, forever. "I will never let you leave." Through Happy Frog, they whisper, "We've only just begun. I will never let you leave. I will never let you rest." These messages of eternal torment, of refusing to let William escape or find peace, align perfectly with what we know of Cassidy's character. In a secret minigame accessible by setting Old Man consequences to difficulty 1 while all others are at 0, the player controls a red bear sprite, likely representing Golden Freddy or Cassidy's spirit. They can catch fish in a lake while Old Man Consequences sits nearby. If the player approaches him, he speaks, "Leave the demon to his demons. Rest your own soul. There is nothing else." The screen can then fade to red, and if the player waits or drowns the character, the game crashes, similar to Golden Freddy's signature move from the first game. This minigame represents a choice offered to Cassidy. Old Man Consequences, a mysterious entity that might represent wisdom, fate, or simply another aspect of the afterlife, is telling Cassidy to let go. William Afton is already in hell, already suffering. Cassidy doesn't need to maintain this torture personally. They can rest, can join the other children who've moved on, can finally be at peace. The red lake might represent the drowning in blood that some theories connect to Cassidy's death, if they were spring-locked like William eventually was. Submersion could mean accepting death, accepting the end, choosing peace. But the fact that the game crashes, that familiar Golden Freddy signature, when the bear drowns, suggests Cassidy's choice. They refuse. They won't rest. They won't leave William to whatever standard punishment awaits him. They want to personally oversee his torment, want to ensure he suffers specifically for his crimes, want to make him experience every fear and pain he inflicted on his victims. This is vengeance as an eternal commitment, spite so deep it rejects peace. Withered Golden Freddy appears as a selectable character in Ultimate Custom Night, and his behavior mirrors his role in previous games. He can appear in the office, forcing the player to quickly close the monitor to make him disappear. But there's an additional mechanic tied specifically to Golden Freddy and Fredbear. If the player has Golden Freddy set to difficulty 1 and all other characters at 0, and then uses a death coin item on him when he appears, Fredbear jump scares the player instead of Golden Freddy. Fredbear's jump scare is accompanied by heavily distorted voice lines. When pitched up and clarified, these might say things like, "Let's see how many times you can be pulled apart and put back together," and other references to the "I will put you back together" promise from Five Nights at Freddy's 4. This direct connection between Golden Freddy and Fredbear, the fact that attempting to kill one summons the other, reinforces their linked identity while maintaining their separate presentations. The voice lines throughout Ultimate Custom Night paint a picture of the vengeful spirit's personality. They're not mindlessly aggressive. They're purposeful, intelligent, creative in their cruelty. They know William's fears and exploit them. They know his history and force him to relive it. They use the animatronics, the very creations William made and corrupted, as instruments of his punishment. There's a poetic justice in this. William being hunted by mechanical bears and rabbits and chickens, the same way his victims were hunted by him in those suits. But there's also something tragic in Cassidy's choice. The other children found peace. Gabriel, Jeremy, Susie, Fritz, they all moved on in happiest day, released from their torment and able to rest. Only Cassidy remains by choice, anchored to William Afton through hatred. They're trapped just as surely as he is, bound to this hell as its warden, unable to leave because they refuse to let their jailer escape. The Golden Bear continues to exist in torment, twitching and fading, maintained by sheer force of vengeful will. Some have questioned whether this is truly hell or something else. Could ultimate custom night be taking place in William's dying mind, his final moments stretched to infinity as his neurons fire their last signals? Could it be a purgatorial space before final judgment? Could it be taking place in the circuit board that was scanned to create Glitch Trap, a digital prison where consciousnesses can be trapped? The game doesn't provide definitive answers, maintaining the ambiguity that's characterized the franchise. What's not ambiguous is Golden Freddy's role. Whether literally or symbolically, either spiritually or psychologically, Cassidy, in the form of Golden Freddy, is torturing William Afton. The mystery character who crashed games and defied explanation has become a defined entity with a defined purpose: eternal vengeance. This recontextualizes every appearance of Golden Freddy in previous games. Those manifestations weren't random hauntings. They were Cassidy making their presence known, establishing their power, preparing for the day when they could claim their killer completely. Ultimate Custom Night transforms Golden Freddy from a question mark into an exclamation point. We finally understand why this character was different, why they were more powerful, why they persisted when others faded. Cassidy made a choice that the other children didn't, choosing revenge over peace, choosing eternal awareness over rest, and choosing to become William Afton's personal demon. The one he should not have killed, not because it was morally worse than the other murders, but because this victim would never, ever let him forget what he'd done. The two souls theory. Golden Duo. Among the most debated theories in Five Nights at Freddy's lore is the question of whether Golden Freddy is possessed by one soul or two. The Golden Duo theory, as it's commonly called, proposes that both Cassidy and the crying child share the Golden Freddy suit, their spirits combined in a unique possession scenario that would explain many of the characters' unusual behaviors and contradictions. This theory draws from evidence scattered across games, books, and hidden details, attempting to reconcile mysteries that a single-soul explanation struggles to address. And the foundation for Golden Duo comes from the Fazbear Fright Story anthology, specifically the Stitch Wraith character featured in the epilogue sequences. The Stitch Wraith is an endoskeleton possessed by two souls. Jake, a boy who died of cancer and possessed his Simon doll, which was then incorporated into the endoskeleton, and Andrew, the vengeful spirit, who attached himself to William Afton and later to the endoskeleton. These two spirits share a body but maintain distinct personalities and motivations, sometimes cooperating and sometimes conflicting. Scott Cawthon has stated that the Fazbear Fright stories, while not directly canon to the game's timeline, are meant to fill in blanks and answer questions about how certain mechanics work in the FNAF universe. The Stitch Wraith's existence proves that dual possession is possible in this franchise's logic. Two souls can inhabit one animatronic, each contributing different aspects to the possessed entity's behavior and abilities. If it can happen with the Stitch Wraith, the theory goes, it can happen with Golden Freddy. Evidence for dual possession in Golden Freddy comes from several sources. The survival logbook, a canon piece of merchandise, features conversations between what appear to be two distinct entities. One asks questions in faded text, using phrases like, "Do you have dreams?" and "What do you see?" The responses come in altered text, writing that changes and adds to the printed book content. The entity asking questions seems to be Cassidy, trying to help someone remember their past. The entity responding appears to be the crying child, unconfused and struggling to recall details of their life and death. The questions asked target specific memories from Five Nights at Freddy's 4, asking about the Fredbear plush, about characters from the minigames, about details only the crying child would know. This suggests Cassidy is trying to help the crying child remember who they are, possibly to help them move on, or simply to establish communication. The fact that this conversation happens in a security logbook, an item connected to the game's locations and possessed animatronics, implies both spirits have access to influence objects in the physical world. Looking at Golden Freddy's behavior across the games through a dual soul lens offers interesting interpretations. In Five Nights at Freddy's 2, the withered form appears more aggressive and physical, and sometimes manifesting as just a head, behavior that could represent the crying child's fragmented presence. In the first game, Golden Freddy sits slumped and passive until noticed, a behavior that might reflect the crying child's fear and reluctance, while the "it's me" messages could be him trying to communicate with his brother Michael, the night guard. The different manifestations of Golden Freddy across games could represent which soul is more dominant in that particular scenario. When Golden Freddy appears to torment William Afton in Ultimate Custom Night, interpretations suggest that's Cassidy's vengeance driving the manifestation. When Golden Freddy appears to Mike Schmidt with "it's me" messages, that might be the crying child reaching out to his brother, if we accept that Mike Schmidt is Michael Afton. The twitching in the Ultimate Custom Night ending could represent tension between the two souls, Cassidy holding on to rage while the crying child wants to rest. The bad ending of Five Nights at Freddy's 3 shows Golden Freddy's head with what initially appeared to be 2 lights in the eye sockets, though closer examination revealed only one light reflecting to create that illusion. Some theorists still point to this as symbolic of dual possession. The idea of 2 sources of light, 2 souls, being intentionally suggested even if the technical execution didn't perfectly match. Others note that in that same ending, Golden Freddy's head is positioned separately from the others, in the background, perhaps indicating a different status or nature compared to the single-soul possessions of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy. The Golden Duo theory would explain why Golden Freddy behaves so differently from other possessed animatronics. With 2 souls sharing control, the entity would be inherently more complex, more contradictory, more powerful through combined spiritual energy. Cassidy's vengeance and the crying child's fear mixing together could create an entity that's simultaneously aggressive and passive, present and absent, physical and ghostly. The unique behaviors that set Golden Freddy apart wouldn't be arbitrary, but would be the natural result of dual possession creating emergent properties. Critics of the theory point to several counter-arguments. The Happiest Day minigame in Five Nights at Freddy's 3 appears to free all 5 missing children, with the 5th child receiving the Golden Freddy mask. If the crying child was also in Golden Freddy, where are they in this scene? The minigame shows only 5 children at the party, not 6, suggesting Golden Freddy hosts only Cassidy. When the good ending shows all the animatronic heads going dark, Golden Freddy's head goes completely dark, not partially, which a dual soul theory would suggest should happen if only one of two souls had moved on. There's also the question of how the crying child would have gotten into Golden Freddy in the first place. We know Cassidy was killed by William Afton and stuffed into a suit, bringing them into contact with the animatronic at the moment of death or shortly after. This physical contact is what allows possession in the FNAF universe. The crying child died in a hospital after the bite of a 1983, not in contact with any animatronic suit. How would their soul have reached Golden Freddy? And some versions of Golden Duo theory propose that William Afton, in his attempt to put back together his deceased son, somehow placed the crying child's remnant or spirit into the Fredbear/Golden Freddy suit. This would make the possession deliberate rather than natural, a result of William's experimentation with the supernatural mechanics he was discovering through his murders and remnant research. The crying child would then be present in Golden Freddy through different mechanics than Cassidy, creating an asymmetric dual possession. Another argument for two souls comes from the "It's me" messages themselves. In the books, particularly The Fourth Closet, Michael Brooks, the child possessing Golden Freddy in the novel trilogy, says "It's me" to Carlton when revealing himself. If this phrase is specifically associated with a child in Golden Freddy trying to identify themselves, having both Cassidy and the crying child present could explain why the message appears so frequently and insistently. It's not just one spirit saying "it's me," it's potentially two spirits, each trying to make their presence known, each asserting their identity against the threat of being forgotten or subsumed. The theory also attempts to reconcile contradictions in Golden Freddy's gender. Some sources describe the character as male, others as female. Cassidy in the Fourth Closet novel is female, but the face shown for "the one you should not have killed" in Ultimate Custom Night appears to be a young boy. If Golden Freddy contains both a male spirit, the crying child, and Cassidy, whose gender is ambiguous in the games, and references to either gender could be accurate depending on which soul is being referenced or which is dominant at that moment. Golden Duo also offers an explanation for why the death coin in Ultimate Custom Night, when used on Golden Freddy set to difficulty 1, summons Fredbear instead. If Golden Freddy contains both Cassidy and the crying child, and Fredbear is specifically associated with the crying child's death, using the death coin might be separating the two souls temporarily, revealing the Fredbear aspect, the crying child's trauma, underneath the Golden Freddy appearance, Cassidy's possession. The strongest evidence against dual possession might be Occam's razor. The simplest explanation is often correct. Having Golden Freddy be possessed by Cassidy alone, and with the crying child becoming some other entity like Shadow Freddy, or simply moving on after death, creates fewer complications. The survival logbook conversation could be Cassidy talking to Michael Afton, who wrote in the logbook as Mike Schmidt, rather than two spirits in Golden Freddy talking to each other. Many of the two soul pieces of evidence have alternative single-soul explanations that don't require the complexity of shared possession. Ultimately, the Golden Duo theory remains just that, a theory. Scott Cawthon has not confirmed whether Golden Freddy contains one soul or two. The evidence is genuinely ambiguous, allowing for multiple interpretations. What we can say with certainty is that Golden Freddy's identity is more complex than the straightforward possessions of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, and Foxy, and whether that complexity comes from containing two souls, or from Cassidy alone being a particularly powerful and vengeful spirit, Golden Freddy stands apart from every other possessed animatronic in the franchise. The debate between Golden Duo believers and single-soul theorists has become one of the defining discussions in the FNAF theory community. Both sides present compelling arguments. Both can explain most of the evidence, and both acknowledge that some details don't perfectly fit any explanation. In a franchise built on mystery and ambiguity, perhaps it's fitting that Golden Freddy's most fundamental question, how many souls it contains, remains unsolved even after a decade of games and stories. Golden Freddy versus Fredbear. Same or different? One of the most persistent questions in Five Nights at Freddy's lore is whether Golden Freddy and Fredbear are the same character or separate entities. On the surface, this seems like a simple question. They're both Golden Bear animatronics. They appear in related contexts. They're obviously connected somehow. But the deeper you dig into the evidence, the more complicated this relationship becomes, with arguments on both sides, and Scott Cawthon himself maintaining deliberate ambiguity. The argument that they're the same character starts with the basics. Both are Golden Yellow Bear animatronics. Both appear in contexts related to Fredbear's family diner and the early history of Fazbear Entertainment. The Freddy Files, an official guidebook, explicitly states that Golden Freddy and Fredbear are the same being, though this guidebook is known to contain errors and shouldn't be taken as infallible. From a narrative standpoint, having Golden Freddy be the Fredbear suit from the original diner, now possessed and haunting the later locations, creates a clean connection between the franchise's past and present. The physical evidence supports this reading. Golden Freddy appears to be a yellow version of Freddy Fazbear, and Fredbear was the original bear character before Freddy. If we understand Freddy Fazbear as essentially a rebranded brown version of Fredbear for the pizza restaurant chain, then Golden Freddy being a Fredbear suit makes perfect sense. It would be the original Golden Bear design that predated the Freddy redesign, explaining why it looks like Freddy, but in yellow. Looking at the timeline, our Fredbear's family diner closed after the bite of 1983. The Fredbear animatronic suit from that location had to go somewhere. If it was moved to a Freddy Fazbear's pizza location, stored in a back room alongside the other old animatronics, that would explain Golden Freddy's presence in those restaurants. When Cassidy was killed and stuffed into a suit, if that suit was the old Fredbear one, their possession would transform it into Golden Freddy, a ghostly version of the original character. But the argument that they're different entities has its own compelling evidence. In FNAF World, both Golden Freddy and Fredbear appear as separate, selectable characters. Golden Freddy has black accessories while Fredbear has purple. A consistent difference across their appearances. They have different adventure character models, different load screens, and different status as characters in that game. While FNAF World isn't strictly canon to the main timeline, Scott Cawthon's decision to separate them in that game suggests they occupied different conceptual spaces in his mind. Ultimate Custom Night also features both Golden Freddy and Fredbear as separate entities. Withered Golden Freddy appears with his dark accessories and deteriorated form, while Fredbear appears with purple accessories and clearer, less damaged features. They have different AI behaviors, different challenge values, different roles in the game. True, using the death coin on Golden Freddy summons Fredbear, creating a connection, but they're still presented as distinct selections on the character roster. The physical differences extend beyond just accessory colors. Our Fredbear in Ultimate Custom Night and in the FNAF4 minigames appears chubbier, with a more rounded build. Golden Freddy, especially in his FNAF1 incarnation, shares Freddy Fazbear's slimmer build and proportions. Fredbear's head shape is subtly different, with smaller ears and a wider face. These aren't dramatic differences, but they're consistent enough to suggest distinct designs rather than the same character in different states. From a lore perspective, treating them as separate creates interesting possibilities. Perhaps Fredbear was the original Springlock suit from Fredbear's family diner, while Golden Freddy is a later suit created for Freddy Fazbear's pizza locations, designed to match Fredbear's color scheme as a backup performer or spare suit. And this would explain why Golden Freddy appears in Freddy Fazbear's pizza locations, specifically, rather than just being brought from the diner. Multiple suits of the same character existing would be standard practice for a restaurant chain. The Stage 01 minigame in FNAF 3 explicitly labels its Golden Bear character as G Freddy in the game files, suggesting it's Golden Freddy performing on stage, not Fredbear. If Golden Freddy and Fredbear were identical, why wouldn't the file just say Fredbear? The distinction implies two separate entities, with Golden Freddy being the Freddy Fazbear's pizza version of the Golden Bear character, while Fredbear remained the Fredbear's family diner mascot. Some theorists propose a middle ground. Golden Freddy is a spiritual manifestation rather than a physical suit. In this interpretation, a Fredbear is the actual animatronic that existed physically, while Golden Freddy is the ghost form, the appearance Cassidy's spirit takes when manifesting. This would explain Golden Freddy's supernatural behaviors, his ability to appear and disappear, his game-crashing powers. He's not bound by the physical suit because he's not actually that suit anymore, just the ghost of it, shaped by how Cassidy remembers or imagines it should look. This spiritual interpretation could reconcile the behavioral differences. Physical Fredbear had working spring-lock mechanisms, could walk, could perform on stage. Spiritual Golden Freddy doesn't walk, doesn't need spring locks, can teleport and phase through walls and crash games because he's not subject to physical laws. They could be the same entity at different levels of existence. Fredbear as the corporeal anchor, Golden Freddy as the supernatural manifestation. The color of the accessories remains a sticking point. Fredbear consistently appears with purple hat and bow tie in FNAF4's minigames and in Ultimate Custom Night. Golden Freddy has dark blue or black accessories in most appearances, matching Freddy Fazbear's color scheme. Some have explained this as lighting differences or aging, with the purple fading to black over time. Others point out that in some FNAF1 images, Golden Freddy's accessories do look purplish under certain lighting, suggesting it might be the same base color appearing different due to rendering or environmental factors. The question of whether they're the same or different also impacts how we understand the crying child story. If Golden Freddy is literally Fredbear, then the animatronic that killed the crying child is the same one later possessed by Cassidy, creating a tragic circle. The child feared Fredbear was killed by Fredbear, and if the crying child is part of Golden Freddy through Golden Duo theory, ended up trapped in Fredbear. If they're different, that circle breaks, and the connections become more abstract and metaphorical, rather than literally the same suit. Scott Cawthon's own statements on Golden Freddy have been deliberately vague. In one interview, he said he couldn't explain Golden Freddy, that some things just happen during game development. This could mean Golden Freddy's existence was somewhat accidental, starting as a yellow recolor for the first game, and growing into something more significant as the lore developed. If that's true, the question of whether he's Fredbear might not have had a definitive answer initially, with Scott only deciding how to handle the relationship as the series progressed. The safest conclusion might be that Golden Freddy and Fredbear are connected, but not identical. Fredbear is a specific animatronic that existed at a specific location and was involved in a specific tragedy. Golden Freddy is a possessed manifestation, potentially using a Fredbear suit or a similar suit as an anchor, but transformed by Cassidy's spirit into something unique. They share DNA, so to speak, but they're not the same entity any more than Springtrap is just Spring Bonnie, or the puppet is just the security puppet animatronic. And what matters most for understanding Golden Freddy's story isn't whether the suit is technically the same physical object as Fredbear, or a different but similar suit. What matters is the connection between the Golden Bear imagery and the tragedies that have occurred around it. The Bite of 1983, the missing children incident, the vengeful spirit's torment, all of these converge on this Golden Bear form. Whether we call it Fredbear or Golden Freddy, it represents loss, fear, vengeance, and the refusal to rest while injustice remains unpunished. Golden Freddy in later games and modern FNAF. As the Five Nights at Freddy's franchise expanded beyond its original game series, Golden Freddy's presence evolved and adapted to new formats and storytelling approaches. While not always taking center stage, this character continued to appear in various forms, cementing his role as one of the franchise's most enduring and significant entities. Five Nights at Freddy's AR. Special delivery brought Golden Freddy into the augmented reality mobile game with updated mechanics and a fresh design. In this game, Golden Freddy appears fully golden, including his teeth, with a shinier, more polished appearance than his original worn look. For the first time in the franchise, players could see Golden Freddy actually moving his limbs in his workshop animation, though the movements were less fluid than other animatronics, maintaining that sense of wrongness that defines the character. The game mechanics had Golden Freddy function as a combination of 5 different animatronics' behaviors, able to switch between the mechanics of Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, Ice and Springtrap randomly during encounters. When he haywires, the player must look away, similar to Springtrap. His footsteps sound like metallic springs moving, evoking the spring lock technology that defines Fredbear's original design. The "It's me" phrase and Golden Freddy's face flash on screen at the start of encounters, maintaining that signature element from the original games. The Dark Circus, Encore DLC for AR, introduced Great Escape Golden Freddy, a skin that shows Golden Freddy bound in chains, locks, and weights, covered in severe water damage, trapped in what appears to be a water tank. The trailer shows him screaming in anger and attempting to break free from his restraints. This imagery heavily references Ultimate Custom Night's Old Man Consequences minigame and the Red Lake, suggesting Cassidy's struggle against the offered peace, their refusal to escape their self-imposed prison of vengeance. The water damage might symbolize drowning in blood or drowning in the metaphorical lake of consequences. Security Breach and its DLC didn't feature Golden Freddy directly in gameplay, but connections exist through obscure details. In the base game's files, the princess from the Princess Quest minigame was temporarily labeled as Cassidy, creating a direct link between the retro game protagonist and Golden Freddy's spirit. This file name was later changed back to Princess, possibly due to story changes during Security Breach's turbulent development. Some theorize the Princess Quest games represent Cassidy's journey toward freedom, and with the player helping them escape the digital prison glitch trap created, or that they created for themselves through vengeance. The Ruin DLC's Candy Cadet stories reference Golden Freddy themes through tales of children being put back together, or combining into single entities, echoing both the "I will put you back together" promise and the Golden Duo theory's dual possession concept. While never explicit, these stories maintain Golden Freddy's presence in the narrative, even without direct appearances, his themes woven into the fabric of the newer lore. The 2023 Five Nights at Freddy's movie brought Golden Freddy to live action, possessed by a character named Cassidy, who serves as the leader among the murdered children's spirits. Unlike the games where Golden Freddy rarely speaks, the movie's Cassidy talks to Mike Schmidt in offering him dreams and eventually threatening his family. The movie's Golden Freddy can manifest both as a physical animatronic and as a ghost child, bridging the supernatural and physical in ways that honor the game character's dual nature. In the film, Golden Freddy's ghost is the only one of the children who speaks verbally and seems more self-aware than the others, who remain more childlike and confused. This elevated awareness mirrors Ultimate Custom Night's presentation of the vengeful spirit as intelligent and purposeful in their torment. The movie also shows Golden Freddy killing Afton's accomplice by biting down on her head, a direct reference to the bite of 1983, and demonstrating how this character's connection to biting attacks spans different timelines and continuities. The Help Wanted series didn't feature Golden Freddy extensively, though the Curse of Dreadbear DLC included Dreadbear, a Frankenstein-themed version of Fredbear that mechanically and thematically echoed Golden Freddy. The DLC's Halloween setting and pieced-together aesthetics referenced the put-back-together promise, while the Dreadbear character's heavy, shambling movement and prominent role in creating fear called back to Nightmare Fredbear from FNAF4. The week before, a canon novel that explores events at Freddy Fazbear's Pizza features Golden Freddy in ways that reportedly honor his established mechanics and mysterious nature. Based on community discussions, the book appears to maintain Golden Freddy's connection to key phrases and behaviors established in the games, though specific plot details vary across reader interpretations. The Return to the Pit game, an adaptation expanding the Into the Pit story, features Golden Freddy elements in its portrayal of the Ball Pit realm, a supernatural graveyard of memories where victims' souls linger. While the game focuses on the Yellow Thing, a monstrous organic entity born from agony, the aesthetics and themes overlap with Golden Freddy's spectral nature and connection to the missing children incident. Across all these appearances, certain elements remain consistent. Golden Freddy is always connected to the number 5, the fifth child, the fifth victim. He's always supernatural, operating by different rules than physical animatronics. He's always associated with "it's me," with vengeance, with refusing to rest. Whether rendered in pixels, polygons, augmented reality, or live action. Whether called Golden Freddy, Fredbear, or simply the Vengeful Spirit, this character maintains core attributes that make him recognizable and significant. The modern FNAF timeline, with its digital horrors like Glitch Trap and AI entities like the Mimic, represents a shift away from the original game's ghostly possession mechanics. Yet Golden Freddy's presence lingers even in these new contexts, his themes of vengeful spirits and trauma leaving lasting impressions echoing through the newer lore. Cassidy's refusal to rest, their choice of eternal awareness over peace, becomes a template for understanding other entities that persist beyond their natural endpoints. The enduring legacy and mystery. As we near the end of our journey through Golden Freddy's complete story, it's worth reflecting on what makes this character so compelling and why the mystery surrounding them has captivated fans for over a decade. In a franchise filled with haunted animatronics, child murders, and supernatural horrors. Golden Freddy stands apart not just through unique mechanics, but through representing fundamental questions about identity, memory, and the cost of vengeance. Golden Freddy's power in the franchise comes from ambiguity. We know enough to understand the broad strokes: a murdered child or children, possession of a golden bear suit, supernatural abilities that exceed normal hauntings, a refusal to find peace while the killer remains. But the specifics remain debated. Is it one soul or two? Is it Fredbear or a separate suit? Did the crying child possess it or move on? Did Cassidy truly create Ultimate Custom Night? Or was that William's dying mind torturing itself? These questions lack definitive answers, and that's not a weakness of the lore, but a strength. The ambiguity allows each player, each theorist, each fan, to construct their own understanding of Golden Freddy based on the evidence they find most compelling. Some see tragic siblings trapped together, working through trauma and identity. Others see Cassidy alone, so focused on revenge that they become their own prison. Some see the character as primarily connected to the bite of 1983 and the crying child's fear. Others center the missing children incident and Cassidy's murder as the defining tragedy. All these interpretations have textual support. All can be argued persuasively, and none can be proven absolutely correct. And this interpretive flexibility keeps Golden Freddy relevant across the franchise's evolution. As new games introduce new mechanics and characters, Golden Freddy's core mystery remains adaptable. The character can be connected to digital hauntings through Cassidy's possible role in Princess Quest, to Remnant and Agony mechanics through the Golden Bear's association with William's experiments, to questions about AI and consciousness through comparisons between possession and programming. Golden Freddy exists in a space where multiple versions of FNAF's lore intersect, making the character useful for bridging different eras and interpretations of the timeline. The character also serves as emotional anchor for the franchise's themes. Five Nights at Freddy's is fundamentally about children who died unfairly, robbed of futures they deserved, and transformed into something they shouldn't be. Golden Freddy embodies this tragedy while adding layers about choice and consequence. Unlike the other children who eventually rest, Cassidy chooses to remain, transforming from victim to active participant in the horror. This agency, this decision to become tormentor rather than simply suffering torment, adds moral complexity to a character who could easily be one-dimensional. There's something deeply human about Cassidy's choice, even though they're a ghost in a machine. The question of whether to forgive, to move on, to let go of anger and seek peace, these are questions we all face when we've been wronged. Cassidy's answer, to refuse peace in favor of ensuring justice through eternal vigilance, resonates with anyone who's struggled between healing and holding grudges. An old man consequences offers rest, and Cassidy responds by drowning in the lake, by crashing the game, by choosing the harder path of remaining aware and angry. For the crying child's potential presence in Golden Freddy, the tragedy is different but equally compelling. A child who spent his short life in fear, killed by the thing he feared most, possibly trapped in that very form, unable to escape the source of his terror. Whether through Golden Duo or through more metaphorical connections, the crying child story intersects with Golden Freddy in ways that make the character a monument to childhood trauma, to fears that never fully resolve, to wounds that shape identity even after death. Golden Freddy's design itself has become iconic. That slumped posture, the empty eyes with tiny white pupils, the golden color that should feel warm and friendly but instead reads as wrong and corpse-like. These visual elements are instantly recognizable to anyone familiar with Five Nights at Freddy's. The image of Golden Freddy sitting in your office, or manifesting as just a head, or twitching in Ultimate Custom Night. These have been recreated in countless fan works, cosplays, and artistic interpretations. The character's look is simple enough to be easily reproducible, but distinctive enough to never be mistaken for anything else. The mechanics associated with Golden Freddy have similarly become legendary. The game crash from FNAF1 remains one of the most memorable moments in gaming horror. A meta-textual scare that broke the fourth wall and demonstrated that this franchise was willing to do unexpected things, and the "It's me" messages created a phrase that extends far beyond their original context, becoming shorthand for a FNAF's brand of psychological horror. The various methods of triggering Golden Freddy across different games, from posters to hallways to death coins, turned the character into a puzzle to solve, not just a threat to survive. Scott Cawthon's decision to never fully explain Golden Freddy, to leave the character deliberately mysterious, even as other elements of the lore received clarification, shows respect for what makes the character special. Golden Freddy doesn't need to be fully understood to be effective. The mystery is the point. This golden bear exists in the space between what we know and what we suspect, between canon and interpretation, between the dead and the not quite gone. As the FNAF franchise continues with new games, new books, new films, Golden Freddy's story will likely continue to evolve. New evidence will emerge, new connections will be drawn, new theories will form and be debated. But the core of what makes Golden Freddy compelling, the tragedy, the vengeance, the mystery, the refusal to rest, these elements will persist because they're fundamental to who this character is across all interpretations and continuities. To anyone who spent hours watching theory videos, reading lore discussions, debating with friends about whether it's one soul or two, whether Fredbear and Golden Freddy are the same, whether It's Me is the crying child or Cassidy or both, you're participating in exactly what makes this character matter. Golden Freddy's story isn't just what's in the games. It's the collective understanding built by a community that cares enough to dig through every detail, to consider every possibility, to keep asking questions even when definitive answers remain elusive. And maybe that's the point. Maybe Golden Freddy, more than any other FNAF character, represents the collaborative nature of understanding this franchise. We're all trying to put together pieces, to see the full picture, to understand the truth beneath the jump scares and the horror. Golden Freddy sits at the center of that effort, forever slumped, forever watching, forever whispering, "It's me," to anyone willing to listen and wonder who exactly me is. Conclusion. We've reached the end of our journey through the complete story of Golden Freddy, and having traced this enigmatic character from the spring-lock suits of Fredbear's family diner, through a decade of games, theories, and endless speculation. From a child's death in 1983 to a spirit's refusal to rest in Ultimate Custom Night, from mysterious manifestations that crash games to complex debates about souls and vengeance, Golden Freddy has proven to be one of gaming's most fascinating and multi-layered mysteries. The golden bear who sits slumped in security offices, who appears in hallways and minigames, who speaks through "It's Me" messages and twitches in endless torment, represents the heart of what makes Five Nights at Freddy's compelling. This isn't just a haunted animatronic. This is a character built from tragedy and choice, from murdered children and spring-lock failures, from the decision to seek vengeance rather than peace. Whether possessed by Cassidy alone or shared with the crying child, whether the same as Fredbear or a separate entity. Golden Freddy stands as testament to how trauma and anger can persist long after death. We've explored the origins in Fredbear's family diner, where spring-lock technology promised innovation but delivered danger. We've examined the bite of 1983 and how a child's greatest fear became his cause of death. We've detailed the missing children incident and Cassidy's murder, the possession that brought Golden Freddy to supernatural life. Across multiple games, we've analyzed appearance, mechanics, and behavior, watching this character evolve from a simple jump scare into a complex agent of eternal punishment. The theories surrounding Golden Freddy, from Golden Duo's dual possession to the debates about Fredbear's identity, show how a mystery can generate engagement and discussion that extends far beyond simple gameplay. Every appearance of those empty eye sockets, every whisper of "it's me," every game crash and twitching manifestation adds to a puzzle that may never be completely solved. And perhaps that's exactly as it should be. Golden Freddy's refusal to rest, Cassidy's choice to remain as William Afton's eternal tormentor rather than accept peace, mirrors how this character refuses to fade from relevance. New games might introduce new animatronics and new horrors, but the Golden Bear sits patient in the background, waiting to appear in camera feeds and dark corners, waiting to remind us that some spirits won't be appeased, some mysteries won't be solved, and some wounds won't fully heal. If you've made it this far through this deep dive into Golden Freddy's complete story, whether you listened intently to every detail or let the words wash over you as you drifted towards sleep, thank you for joining me on this journey. The story of Five Nights at Freddy's is vast and complex, but Golden Freddy remains one of its most crucial elements, a character who encapsulates what makes this franchise special. The blending of horror and tragedy, the mixing of clear facts and deliberate ambiguity, the way simple animatronics can carry such weight of meaning and emotion. If you enjoyed this exploration of FNAF lore, make sure to like this video and subscribe to Night Mode Lore for more deep dives into the franchise's darkest corners. Let me know in the comments which aspect of Golden Freddy's story you find most compelling, and what other FNAF topics you'd like to see covered in future videos. Until next time, stay curious, stay questioning, and remember, when you see those empty golden eyes staring from the shadows, when you hear that whispered "it's me," you're witnessing a mystery that has captivated millions and will continue to do so for years to come. The Golden Bear is watching. The Golden Bear is waiting. And the Golden Bear's story, even after all this time, is far from over.